Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Adjustment for June 12th, 2022. It is 4:30 p.m. My name is David Alzamora. I'm the chair of the Board of Adjustment. I'll introduce the members on my left and right that are permanent members of the board. We have Jack Farrell here on my right and Jeremy Hooper on my left. We're going to follow the agenda as it is set out, with a slight modification between items 2 and 3. But unless anybody has any questions or comments, we'll go ahead and move to item 2, which is the approval of the minutes of the January 6th, 2022 regular meeting. Does anyone have any questions, comments, corrections regarding those minutes?
No, sir.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 6, 2022 regular meeting?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 6, 2022 minutes for the Board of Adjustment as written.
I have a motion from Jeremy Hooper. Do I have a second? Second from Jack Farrell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion to approve the minutes of the January 6, 2022 regular meeting, those minutes are approved by a 3-0 vote. So the next thing here, before we get into the public hearing, which is item 3 on the agenda, public hearings do require basically a supermajority vote. So we have 3 members sitting currently right now. In order to, I think, vote most effectively and give the most consideration we can, we should have a full board. So either Jack or Jeremy, would either of you like to make a motion to seat any additional members?
I move to seat Matt Jones and Paul Roberts on the Board of Adjustment.
Is there a second?
Second.
So a motion made by Jack Farrell to seat Matt Jones and Paul Roberts on the Board of Adjustment for today's hearing, seconded by Jeremy Hooper. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, we will seat Matt Jones and Paul Roberts for today's Board of Adjustment meeting. Before we get started, I understand, Jeremy, in hearing, the subject matter of this meeting and I guess the applicants that are before us today, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
Yeah, I just have familiarity with the applicants as well as Larry Postlethwaite, and given the long-term familiarity with the applicants, it's all been business for a very, very long time. However, given the opportunity, I'll bow out of this one.
Okay. Can I get a motion to have Jeremy step down for this afternoon's meeting and to seat Sonia Rothstein in his place?
I move that Jeremy Hooper may relinquish his seat at the table for the Board of Adjustment meeting, and in substitution, Sonia Rothstein be approved.
Motion made by Jack Farrell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Matt Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing no opposition. Jeremy, have a nice afternoon and evening. Sonia, welcome to today's board. Does anyone have any, I guess, questions or comments before we sort of get into today's public hearing? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to back to my little guide here real quick, so bear with me. We haven't had enough of these meetings, fortunately, to really get a real script going. So, yeah, I'd like to, I guess, enter into today's public hearing or evidentiary hearing. Is there any opposition to doing that at this time? Can I get a motion to enter the public hearing?
I move that we enter the public hearing
Motion made by Jack Farrell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Matt Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, we will enter today's public hearing number 1. The purpose of today's public hearing is to receive testimony for a variance request from Section 9.2A, Table of Dimensional Requirements for the property addressed as 4 Blair Court, further identified by Moore County Parcel ID number 000-14492. This property is located within the RH High Density Residential Zoning District. Specifically, the owners are Anthony and Mary Wilt. If I'm pronouncing that last name incorrectly, I apologize, but we'll correct it once you guys get up here in a little bit. Mr. and Mrs. Wilt are requesting a variance from the 30-foot minimum golf course setback. Today we have Alex Cameron presenting on behalf of the village. I'll let him go into a little more detail on the application and the requirements of this quasi-judicial hearing.
Can I, Chair, could you swear me in?
Yes. Let me get to our little oath section here. Who plans on speaking this afternoon? Just the both of you, Mr. and Mrs. Wilt. Could I get you guys to come up to the microphone, please, because I'll swear everyone in at the same time.
And in addition, Mr. Postlewaite may provide answers to questions that you may have.
Okay,
on technical
I'll go ahead and
questions.
swear you in right now, too. You can choose to exercise this power or not. That's up to you. Can I get each of you to please state your names? And you don't need to state your address, but if you would just state your names for the record, please.
Real quick, could you guys, if you'd speak into the microphone when you,
Yeah, sorry, this is recorded, so just so everyone
Mr.
can
Postlewaite,
hear it.
you could stand at the podium if you'd like. There's a microphone there for you.
We'll start at the back. Just state your name, please.
Larry Postlewaite.
Anthony Wilt.
Mary Wilt.
Alex Cameron.
Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence that you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
So help me
Thank
God.
you.
All right, thank you. So as Chair Alzamora said, public hearing number 1 is consider a request to vary the 30-foot minimum golf course setback for the property addressed at 4 Blair Court. Property is zoned R10, and the property owners and petitioners for this request are Anthony and Mary Wilt. The evidentiary hearing process, so requests for variances are quasi-judicial decisions which do require the evidentiary hearing. And they are quasi-judicial due to the fact Board of Adjustments exercise discretion in applying standards of review. The purpose of evidentiary hearings is to gather competent, relevant, and factual evidence on the application and to not solicit broad public opinion. All those who wish to participate in the evidentiary hearing are to be sworn in and provide factual testimony relevant to the request only. Staff, and as I will be participating in that position today, will act as sort of an initial witness, kind of giving basic information and background on the request, and enter the staff exhibits into the record. Any other witnesses or applicants, property owners, are to be sworn in and provide additional evidence or testimony on their behalf. Board members, after receiving the information, can ask additional questions as they are related to the request and how they apply to the individual standards of review, which we'll get to in just a minute, and assess the credibility of the testimony that has been given before the board, remain impartial, and then, of course, ultimately have a motion and a vote on the case before them. At the conclusion of the evidentiary hearing, the board, in making its decision, based on the evidence given, shall adopt findings of fact on the standards. So one of the information or agenda items that staff prepares for you guys are a draft decision document, which gives you an opportunity as you receive testimony and deliberate amongst yourselves to make your notes and what your findings could be whenever you make a motion on the record. I would certify that the public hearing was noticed in accordance with North Carolina General Statutes and the Pioneers Development Ordinance, which does require that immediate adjacent property owners and those across rights-of-way are receiving mailed notice of the public hearing, and that public hearing notice is also posted at the subject property. You can see the subject property indicated by the hatched or diagonal lines here in the center of the map. The surrounding property owners that received mailed notice are outlined in red. Also prepared a aerial zoning map too that does show the zoning boundary, not typically as clear as the grayscale or black and white scale that in the previous public hearing notice map. But the aerial does give a little bit better depiction of how the home is oriented on the individual lot, how the adjacent properties are oriented on their lots, and you can see the golf course area, which is the setback area subject to this request this evening. All right, so again, in the R10 zoning district, there is a 30-foot minimum golf course setback, and that is applied to the principal structure. The applicant here wishes to add a sunroom addition over the existing rear patio footprint. And based on survey data just recently received, it shows that that existing patio is plus or minus 17 feet from that rear property line. As you saw in the previous map, the 30-foot golf course setback is applied to that property line due to the fact that it directly abuts Pinehurst Resort's course number 1, which is zoned RD for Recreational Development District. The remaining setbacks on the property are two 15-foot side setbacks and a front setback of 30 feet, which is measured off the cul-de-sac. This diagram kind of outlines it a little bit better. Here, to orient everyone to the south or down on the map is the front cul-de-sac off Blair Court. Side setbacks would be applied on either left and right, and then the golf course setback, of course, is applied off the rear. So this subject lot is referenced as Lot 102, is created part of the subdivision titled Phase 2, Unit 11, page 2 of 3 by Pinehurst, Inc. in June of 1973. So the lot has been created as part of that original subdivision. It's approximately 11,500 square feet in size, which is more than the minimum 10,000 square foot requirement in the R10 district. The home was built circa 1981 according to tax records and was also purchased by the current owners in May of 2009. Those exhibits are entered in your guys' packet. Here is the subject lot, a part of that page 2 of that original subdivision. As you can see, it's still, no revisions have been made to the lot since its original creation. So the home does feature a patio to the rear that appears to have been constructed at the time of construction of the home and does encroach into that 30-foot golf course setback. The dimensions of the patio are 13 by 17, so like 13 deep, 17 foot wide. We'll see a image of the survey in just a little bit. Patio is considered a non-conforming structure and is therefore governed by Section 2.3 of the Pinehurst Development Ordinance. What that section does is it does not allow for existing patios or decks to be roof and walled or included as an addition if that structure is the furthest projection into that setback. The owners, again, do wish to construct an addition over that existing footprint, which would not also meet requirement Section 2.33 of the PDO. If the variance were to be granted, then the new setback essentially would be that current patio footprint, which is 17 plus or minus feet off that rear, just on the footprint of that patio. Here is some information relative to where that patio currently sits on the structure. The best aerial that I could find was a 2007 GIS aerial that just can see it there through the stand of trees in the rear of the property, which is also next to a pretty substantial wooded area of the golf course property. The Moore County Tax Department typically has sketches of the footprints of all the structures when applicable. And here you see the subject patio, the 13-foot dimension again, the depth and the 17-foot wide. And the applicants have provided some photos with their application. And here is in the bottom is one that I've included in the PowerPoint. So you have an idea of how the patio is constructed and that it does seem to appear to match the existing brick and materials of the structure, indicating most likely was approved or was constructed as part of the original home. Here is a snip of the survey that was recently provided to staff yesterday. You have the existing home footprint, and here is the patio footprint here to the rear. The measurements are 17.1 feet and 17.2 on each the left and rear. Shows that encroachment to that 30-foot setback. The applicant has submitted some photos to try to orient and show the distance or relate the distance from that existing footprint to the golf course area. If you're looking at the photo to the left, that's if you're looking from the golf course toward the rear of the home, so you see those stand of trees, and then other perception on the right, looking out into the golf course from the patio. The applicant is which will, I'm sure will have some additional testimony relative to this, but also included in the application for their justification for the hardship standards, have indicated that there are some issues with grade and runoff and water damage, and they have provided some photos in an attempt to satisfy that burden of proof. So the standards of review, so these are the statutory set standards, which are also, of course, reflected in the development ordinance, which states that boards of adjustment shall not grant a variance unless they make the following findings, which means boards of adjustment have to decide if, based on the evidence given, that the applicant has met each one of these standards, not 2, not 4, not 3, but all 4. Unnecessary hardship would result from strict application of the ordinance, so an applicant would have to demonstrate that in absence of a variance being granted, no reasonable use could be made of the property. Condition or standard 2, hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. So there's something that is significantly different about this particular property that might not exist elsewhere or not be common in the general neighborhood, and therefore warrant granting a variance. A third hardship that does not result by actions taken by the applicant or property owner. Just by purchasing a property, by knowing that certain conditions exist, does not result in something that is a self-created hardship. And finally, that the variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is achieved and substantial justice. So action by the board adjustment, what you can do after hearing testimony from those who are present, you do have the ability to subpoena additional witnesses or additional information that you feel is relevant and needed to make your decision. You may continue the public hearing if there is, again, additional information needed or questions that have not been answered. Just if that were the case, you just have to be very specific of the time, date, place. You also have the ability to grant the requested variance. You could also grant the variance with conditions. Any conditions just happen to be reasonably related to the petition before you and how it relates to the standards. And of course, the board has the ability to deny requested variance. Any decision to grant or deny must be accompanied by these findings of fact. So it does state on the record how this application or petition meets or does not meet each one of those 4 standards of review. And as alluded to earlier in the meeting by Chair Alzamora, any motions to grant the variance does require a supermajority of 4/5 vote, concurring vote to grant a variance. So to conclude the staff's presentation, staff does not formulate a recommendation on request for variances as it is based on the evidence given by sworn testimony and other evidence that has been given to the board and the applicants prior to the hearing, which I would like to at this time formally enter the staff report with the staff exhibits, this presentation, and the application and additional material provided by the applicant into the record.
Is there any objection to that? Before we move any further, I would just like to get a disclosure from the members of the board. So the parties in this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in the hearing if he or she has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with an affected person. We already saw Jeremy, although he could have given an impartial hearing, just for his own purposes, thought it was best to step away. So does any board member have any partiality to disclose and a recusal to offer? Perfect. The parties of this case also have rights for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about this case outside of this evidentiary hearing. This may include site visits, conversations with the parties, staff, or the general public. Have any board members visited the site? Have there been any communications of this nature that need to be disclosed? Well, hearing, excuse me, hearing none, I guess the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Wilt, they will now present evidence and any legal arguments in support of their request. Any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards that Alex presented to us. Again, before speaking, just please give us your name and address one more time for the record, if you wouldn't mind. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Mary Wilt, 4 Blair Court, Pinehurst.
Anthony Wilt, 4 Blair Court, Pinehurst.
Whenever you're ready.
I didn't spend all day at the Women's Open like my husband did, so Tony may fall asleep during this hearing. I hope not, but
Do
anyway.
you need some water?
I have some. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks. Our concern, of course, as you can see by the items that were submitted, when we bought our home, we thought we were being smart. We thought, oh, we're going to buy this house that's at the top of the hill, not the bottom of the hill. But we failed to realize that we really weren't at the top of the hill, because when you sit in our living room, the golf course is above us. So there's 2 feet of, on the GIS map, so that significant water runs toward our house. And just to suck up to you, thank you very much for serving on this public board. I serve on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, so I can tell you, because of the work that I've done in my own neighborhood, Durrell Woods, there are significant problems in our neighborhood with water runoff, with water that is affecting people's property. They don't call it mineral springs for no reason. So that's part of the problem. So for us, strict application of this ordinance is going to cause an truly unnecessary hardship, because storm water runs toward our house, and then it is exacerbated because whoever built the home, we don't know if they did it on purpose or if it's the sand soil. The patio actually cants toward the house, so that when it rains, we end up with a pool of water standing next to our house, and it has caused significant problems that we cannot ameliorate. Tony has done new gutters, he's done drains, but the problem...
Downspouts, additional downspouts.
But we have this 13 by 17 pad of concrete that is just pouring water toward the house. You know, a little rain, not bad, but when we get those big storms, it's a huge problem, and Tony's very adept at using the shop vac in the basement to get the water out. And it really is right at that area. You know, it's a full basement. So the only place that we've got this water is right under this patio. So I want to make sure that I'm covering everything. Probably if we were smarter, actually knew what we were doing, even though we did have a home inspection, there was evidence of a problem. I guess we just didn't realize that it was such a big problem and that it would continue to grow over the years. So I think what may have been a little problem has just become worse and worse, and we're really concerned that we don't know what else to do to stop this. And so in the absence of a variance, we're concerned that the wall, can it cave in? I don't know, but we'd like to stop that water from entering into the foundation of our home.
There are pictures, one of which was Alex had up on the screen earlier, which shows water stains on the floor of our basement in addition to flaking on the side of the wall as a result of water coming in. As Kay said, I have shop vac significant amounts of water out of the basement. And the normal rain is fine, but when we have our big rains, 2 inches in a couple of hours, we have water. And one of the other pictures that we showed was termite damage, which is my understanding, and I'm not an expert on this, but dampness is always favorable to termites. And the previous owner has had to replace a section of heading and whatever it's called in the wall. And there are signs of termite treatment down in the basement too. We have not, fortunately, had termites. In fact, we had an inspection last year and did not, so.
And that's part of the problem, in that the entire neighborhood itself, I'm repeating what I said earlier, which is that there is runoff damage, not just to our house, but to other homes in the neighborhood. And I don't know if maybe the golf course should have culverts or something, but we're just dealing with the problem that we've got. Our house is, it's a problem, and it's just something that we feel we've got to stop. Because the next person who wants to buy our house when we're gone may be smarter than we are and say, guys, this isn't going to work. This house is failing. Am I supposed to talk to something
No,
else?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Do you guys have any questions for Mr. and Mrs. Wilt at this time? Would you like Mr. Postlewaite to give any information?
Well, we have other points to make, and I don't know if, am I supposed to make all my points now, or?
Please do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The more we can get up front, go.
So,
Yeah, there are the four,
the four
address
items.
the four
So-
items specifically.
So item number 2, about the hardship resulting from the topography. Well, it's sand, obviously. Our homes are built on sand, and our property is lower than the golf course, so the water does tend to pool, and the soil just is not suitable for absorbing the magnitude of bad storms. And so the stormwater tends to flow and pool around our structure, and that's causing the damage. So speaking to number 2. And with respect to number 3, about, well, obviously, we bought the home in 2009. It was that way when we got here, to quote, who was it, Homer Simpson?
Art Simpson.
Art
yeah.
Simpson, okay. So we have not graded the land or made any changes to it. We purchased a complete home that we thought met all the codes and met all the standards here in Pinehurst. Stormwater apparently is not part of the ordinance here, I don't believe. And, maybe it should be, so that we can, maybe Pinehurst needs to have a master plan for dealing with this sort of water runoff from the courses. And then number 4, in an effort to remedy this damage, our plan is to cover this patio and divert the water 13 feet away from the house, so that we're not having this magnitude of water that continues to come right into the house. And we're not expanding the footprint. Our contractor has told us that the existing brick walls have sufficient footing, if I'm using the right terms, to support the roof. We're just talking about a sloped roof. And so that is our effort to remedy the problem, is to redirect the water away from the house. And
There would then be a gutter at the end of the 13 feet at the far edge of the what is now the patio with a downspout, and then underground, taking the water 10 to 15 feet away, which is what I've done with all the other downspouts in the back of the house. I have about, they all go out underground about 15 feet to a rock sump.
Nobody wants their house to be the house that is falling down and is the worst house in the neighborhood. Plus, it's not healthy to have this kind of water condition. So far, we do not believe that we've had a mold problem, but water, warm, humidity, water, I'm afraid that could be the next, and that's an opinion, not a fact. But the fact is, we have water, and we've got to get rid of it. And we hope that by enclosing the space, and it will help to achieve the purpose and the spirit and the intent of the ordinance, and to be aesthetically, that we hope to achieve the look of the Pinehurst community.
Get your notes. I am still awake. It's hot out there today. No, I think we have a problem with water, which is causing damage to our house. And while there is water coming on the ground, the primary problem that we have is when there is a major rain, this 13 by 17 foot patio, the water all rushes down to one corner. And that is the corner where the water has gone into the house and into the basement. And we have, as you do when you're looking to make a change, we had at least one contractor tell us, as he sat in our living room and looked out, he said, your double doors don't line up. And because the house is settled over there. And I don't see that that's going to get any better, but it's going to get worse unless we're able to move this water someplace else.
You mentioned you have a basement where you can see this water seeping through. Is it a full basement? Does it
Yes.
cover the entire footprint of the home?
It does, yeah. It's at least 2,000 feet.
2,600.
Are there any other areas in your basement where you see any seepage or witness anything coming through the walls?
No, the basement is dry. It's, and in fact, when we bought the house, the previous owners had a different use of it, I suppose. The man actually had a partial office, a small office down there, and there were beds down there and carpeting on a large portion of the floor. Apparently, they had children with grandchildren who came, and that was where they stayed. It didn't really look good.
Well,
No, but the answer is no, and yeah.
and so it just seemed to us that if that family that had owned the house so many years before us, if they had had water, they wouldn't have had carpet on the floor. That would have been really gross. So we had.
It is unusual to have a full basement, I think, in this area.
Yes.
But,
We understand there may be one more in Doral Woods out of the 170 some homes there.
But the water and the staining of the water that's in one of those photographs that we showed you, that came after we bought the house. That was not there.
When you did your inspections and everything?
Right.
Right, yes.
So you didn't submit any type of plan or sketch as to what the addition or building would look like on top of the patio? Not that we're designing or anything like that, but I'm just curious as to, are we talking about conditioned space, or are we talking about a screened-in
Yes.
porch, or okay?
Definitely conditioned.
So you will be reconfiguring the patio and demolishing the floor to grade it properly, is that correct?
No, We can go in, we can build right on top of the existing,
Live with that little bit of slope as long as it's
Oh.
enclosed, is that?
as long as it's enclosed, correct.
And so you'll be tying the gutters in the rear of the house into the addition so that they take it an additional 13 feet
Yes.
out away from the house, any water that falls on the main structure, is that right?
That is correct.
We have gutters on the back of the house, which obviously go all the way across now. They would end there. We're looking, the proposal is for a tin roof sloped away from the house, which would carry the water down to the gutter at the end.
I'll let the building department worry about that. But I mean, so basically you're talking about a standard roof similar to the roof you currently have on the house, style-wise?
The roof that we have on the house is a mansard.
Mansard, yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a, there's a,
Oh, I saw it in the pictures.
okay,
I'm very
there's
familiar
there's
with
a
that.
section there, yeah. The roof would tie into the mansard that we're
Will
putting
be-
on.
It will be tied, will it be of a similar design and/or construction?
We had planned to do a tin roof,
Metal
Okay.
roof.
metal roof, tin, metal, yeah, which was different from the existing asphalt tile.
So a question to staff, if they wanted to demolish the current patio and change the slope on the patio away from the house, that would actually trigger a request for a variance because they'd be rebuilding a non-conforming structure, is that correct?
So if you would basically demo by more than 50%, then any new proposal would have to conform to the current regulations.
Well, demoing the entire floor would be certainly more than 50%, is that correct?
Correct.
So that would require a variance just to change the slope on the patio.
Basically, they are grandfathered as is. So anything that would take care of more than 50% of that existing structure, any new proposal to go back in that footprint would not be allowed within that 30-foot
Talk
setback.
about being in a rock and a hard place there.
50% of the entire footprint or of just the patio?
Of the nonconformity.
Now, there are other nonconformities in this lot, but they're not of relevance relative to this particular application, is that correct?
Correct. It appears that both left and right sides are nonconforming to the side 15-foot setback.
And that,
Now,
that was that way when we bought it. We
Do
have
you-
not changed that.
do you plan as a part of this addition, should you be able to do it, any additional hardscape or other outside the patio area, any additional construction, hardscape or,
No,
okay? So it would be only within the footprint, and the footprint being the outer part of the,
the wall that you
Wall,
see,
the
the
city
wall
wall.
that you see in the pictures,
yeah.
yes.
Right.
In fact, there are pillars at each of the two corners out there, and those would, a lot of that would be taken off. There's a section that extends a little bit beyond the patio on each of those, a brick section that would come off so that the builder could go straight up from there.
right, of course, to construct properly, right?
Yes.
Would you mind elaborating a little bit again on the previous measures that you've taken to address, I guess, water issues, drainage issues around the home?
I have, the house as we bought it had 3 downspouts on the back, which then went underground. I have replaced all of those. Not the downspout itself, but the underground section where I found them clogged with pine straw. And have taken them out to approximately 13 to 15 feet away from the house. On the right-hand side of the patio, as you're looking toward the golf course, I added another downspout and put a drain in the ground there that the downspout goes into, and it's a Do you know the term for that drain, Larry?
Of what, the drain, French drain?
It's not a French drain, though. It's just a straight box. And from there, I have another,
In a way.
I'm sorry?
Sort of a dry well.
Yes, yeah, that the water goes into, and then I have another 13 feet going away from that out past the edge of the patio. And on the left-hand side, I've also gone in and tied the downspout into an additional drain going out 13 feet, or not an additional, replacement drain. And then farther down, I have replaced the underground going out away from the house there also.
And the measures, you're not necessarily redirecting any water
Right.
into the streets or neighborhoods. It sounds like you're trying to contain it on the lot as much as you can. So
Yes, yeah. It goes out toward the golf course with a tiny slope away from the house as I put it in.
And then we have those covers on the window wells.
And we have 2 window wells in the back of the house also that are covered.
Sounds like an ongoing project. Unfortunately, the state has ruled that water can run downhill, much to the concern of a lot of homeowners.
And, I mean, the trees are great, but it's still water.
Understand? No, it sounds like a significant item, right?
As part of the package, we did have our contractor, Mr. Postlethwaite, suggest from his experience that enclosing this patio with a roof to take the water away was really the only viable and permanent solution to the issue.
Well, since we have Mr. Postlethwaite here, can you please introduce yourself? I know you already have, but just state your name for the
Yeah,
record.
Larry Postwaite, my company is Home RX LLC. I've been building here for 28 years. I built a couple of homes in Old Town and one in the village and remodeled several houses. This structure being on a cul-de-sac, the neighbors' houses, the back of their houses face away. So any vertical structure going on the back of the Wilt's house won't even be in sight of their homes. So there won't be any obstruction that way. The other thing is because of the layout of the golf course at a 90-degree up there where the green is, it's 75 or 100 feet out there of just woods. And I think you have a letter from Richard Higginbotham from Pinehurst saying that he has no problem with what we would do. This would be a Douglas fir beams with a metal roof, and rest would be glass. So it would be an attractive addition to the home. It solved their problem and wouldn't have really upset anybody in sight.
I guess the addition, in addition to enclosing what's going to go on top of the patio, water's still going to run down the roof. Will there be plans to connect into the existing?
Yeah, there'll be guttering at the end and downspouts and be drawn away from the property.
I have a question. This is the drawing of the house, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're going to just enclose this area around?
Yes,
What are
ma'am.
you doing about water that's going to come down here? I mean, I don't want to rain on your parade, but I think just spouts, having had a house with that kind of problem, is not going to solve all of that water. You're going to have water sitting, I believe, in this corner here.
I have, just to the, off of that picture is the downspout that I added,
And the dry well.
and there is a dry well right there.
I still think you're going to have some water issues on the other side of this room, even with your downspouts. I think you should, and I'm not an engineer, I don't know, but I think you may need some French drains or something besides your dry wells. And I have dry wells at my house now, and they're not always sufficient. So I'm just trying to help you see that this sounds real good on paper and talking about it, and I know he's a builder, but I also know about water, and once you have that problem, it's very difficult, I know. But I think you do need to think about the outside, especially just from this picture. I see lots of dampness there, even though you have the well. So I'm just trying to help you. I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I'm just trying to protect you.
I would say, though, that the way the patio is built with access on both sides, when the water runs toward the house, it may tend to run off those those openings in the brick wall, which further exacerbates the problem.
It runs.
Is that correct?
Right now, the patio is canted, if you're looking at the picture, that way. It slopes from the exterior wall toward the house, and from this wall you're looking at on the left to the right. So the water, we don't really have much problem. We have not had water in the basement on this side of the patio. It's all been over on the other side.
It comes through that opening.
Correct. And we do intend to close the opening on this side as part of
I
the
would hope
project.
so.
Yes, yeah.
But your addition would have some type of access to the outside.
It
Is that
would.
correct?
Yes.
Where would
Over
that be?
On that side.
That side being, you're pointing on,
I'm pointing at the picture up above.
Where the small, crisp, because of the,
Where you see the downspout, there is an opening right there, and that would be the opening.
yes, that would be the door.
the assumption is that the addition would be fully designed to alleviate this problem. That's the primary reason for the addition, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, in general, I don't know if we're in discussion mode here, but in general, I'm rather reluctant to approve variances that increase the nonconformity. However, in this case, number one, I see a significant hardship. And number two, I don't see, to alleviate the issue, I don't see how you can avoid getting a variance in any case. I mean, to reconstruct the patio in its entirety would require another variance. You'd be back here. So in this case, I have an understanding that I believe there is a hardship in this situation. I also believe that any attempts to remediate the hardship would be unsuccessful without a significant change in the construction, which would, again, trigger potentially another variance request. So in that sense, I have some sympathy towards this.
I guess I'll start on the right, as we often do, and we haven't heard from Paul yet, but Paul, do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make at this time?
Just make sure your microphone's on too. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. You're not going to expand beyond the existing patio wall,
That is
right?
correct.
So you put your pillars in there, roof that comes off the existing roof, done by, licensed contractor, everything's good. And the property behind yours is owned by who? Is that all?
Miners Resort.
And the CFO or CEO has already said no problems with that?
That is
That is
correct.
correct.
And then it looked like was your closing attorney out of state when you guys purchased the
When we
place?
purchased.
There was a deed in here, I guess it was an exhibit.
The closing attorney was
Cipher.
Harley.
Okay.
Burley
But
Thompson.
you were not made aware of the restrictions on the setback or what you couldn't do?
We were not.
Okay. All right. Nope, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, we're talking glassed enclosure, which would sit on the wall as it exists right now. Yeah.
No further questions. Thank you.
As I will, well, just from my experience as a closing attorney, although you may see those setbacks, unless somebody gets a survey at the time a house is purchased, you won't necessarily know that something's encroaching, or even if it is encroaching, which it is in this case, if it's been approved and is a permitted non-conforming or permitted non-conformance, then, that's why we're here today, because they're seeking some change on the existing non-conformance, so.
We are so far back from the golf course, I mean, that Pinehurst will never cut down those trees to change the way the course turns. That's not going to happen.
I have been in those trees with an errant shot, but nowhere near your house, I'm happy to say.
No, our next door neighbor is on the fairway coming up to.
Yeah, he gets, I
that green. He
understand
gets
that.
the golf ball. He provides me with golf balls. We've had 3 golf balls in our yard in 13 years.
Yeah, you're in an awkward spot. If you find a golf ball, it's really, it's come off a tree probably.
That's a real problem.
So you do not plan any additional construction beyond the addition of the addition, I'll call it that, or construction over the, and it'll be completely contained within the current footprint of the
That is correct.
patio. Okay, fine, thank you.
This is questions and discussion, or just?
Yeah, I think so.
Whatever, yeah.
All my questions have already been asked, actually. But I do agree, I think the situation represents a hardship that is peculiar to the property. Although at first, in what you were saying, I was waving on that because drainage is an issue, as you were saying, for all the lots here. But I think the combination of factors, the grading, the fact that you only see the seepage in the area where the patio terminates at the basement, and the fact that you have a basement, all those things together make it pretty peculiar. You know, it doesn't have to be the weirdest thing in the world, but it needs to be peculiar, and you haven't done anything to exacerbate it, or certainly to cause the situation, and I think it's consistent, so.
Sonia?
I have one more question. What is the builder going to do for the wall that attaches to the patio? Are you going to put any treatment in there or anything before you build this room out? Because you're going to have moisture in there.
That's the side that's getting closed off you're talking about?
For, next to the house, yes.
Yeah.
The wall that attached,
That'll be bricked in, just like the rest of
I'm talking
the,
about by the doors, where you're saying it's seeping in around that area, correct? What are you going to do there to treat it for the water, the moisture? Because it's going to get trapped in there, right?
the door's going to have a threshold to alleviate any water from draining in that side.
The wall up against the house will be a finished wall. And at the start of this project, before we determined that we had a variance issue, I mean, we thought that we were good to go on this way back last year until the project was presented and the village said, no, you can't do that because you're extending. And that's when we first found out that we had a variance issue. And where was I going with that? Larry actually had people out who water treated the inside of the wall of the patio itself, the surrounding wall and the wall of the house in that area. And as I say, there will be a finished wall there. Is that?
I'm just asking for your sake, not for mine.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay.
No, we appreciate it.
Might not, and this is probably a question for Mr. Postlewaite. You guys have addressed the soil issues, it's sand, things settle over time. There's a realistic chance that this patio has settled in a way which has kind of created the flows that we're seeing now.
We've made that assumption because we assumed that whoever built the patio didn't build a patio that sloped toward the house. That wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Oh, hopefully.
Right.
If that's the case, are there any kind of steps that can be taken to eliminate any potential sagging in the future, because the way I look at it is the roof is going to, in itself, protect whatever, uneven situations are on the floor. It's going to prevent water from pooling where it is now, so it's going to be directed away. But just potential structural issues going forward as a result of settling, are there any steps that can be taken to sort of alleviate that on the front end?
Well, we dug around the existing patio and checked the footings, and they seem to be in compliance with the code. So we're relying on those to stay where they are. And actually, the shed roof, metal roof, accent roof, is on 3x12 Douglas fir beams going to the outside wall of the patio. So really, all the weight is out there. There's really no additional stress or weight being put on the sidewalls other than the glass enclosure.
I can't really think of any, I personally don't have any other questions right now. I feel like, you've brought forth plenty of evidence of the issue that you're experiencing. Like Jack has already brought up, if you were to fix this patio, you're going to be requesting a variance anyways. There's a chance that fixing the patio, even if you slope it away from the house, a similar situation could happen in the future. I don't like getting hypothetical here, but it seems like what's been considered is a very adequate way to redirect flow away from the home, which is the goal. In going through these factors, I'm just going to go through these factors. If you guys have any questions or comments after, just let me know, and I'm happy to discuss whatever might come up. I'm going to leave the evidentiary hearing open, just in case we do have any further questions from the applicants or Mr. Postlethwaite. But starting with the first one, unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It would result because it appears that water would continue to seep into the basement. If they weren't allowed to receive this variance and, build this addition up in a way to redirect the water without changes that they'd have to request a variance for anyways, the water is going to continue to pool, and it's likely going to continue to seep into the basement. The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. It's located at a point on the lot where, although the lots surrounding them are also on the golf course, it appears that the slope does, kind of direct everything into the home. Furthermore, I think a basement in Pinehurst, especially in this area, is pretty rare. You don't see that, so I would consider that a pretty unique characteristic of the property. And it's unique in that sense because without the basement, although water might be seeping in somewhere, it's seeping into a usable part of your home, and it's damaging, aspects of the foundation, things that could be, hazardous in the future, and it really just affects the use of what you can make in that space. So, the hardship did not result from any actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. From what I can tell, the home was purchased. You haven't really made any changes. In fact, it appears that you've tried to alleviate this issue without making any changes. You didn't build the patio. You haven't done anything on the patio to create this pooling issue. So, I feel like letter C is also satisfied. And coming to the last one, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. I think this variance will allow the property owners to really protect their home, ensure that it's structurally sound. They'll be able to make full use of their basement space without having to shop back everything up. It'll hopefully preserve the value of the building. As they mentioned, you don't want to be the home that's falling apart in the neighborhood. If something were to come of the foundation as a result of this water damage, then I think the burden there is, if it's preventable, then, somebody shouldn't have to experience it. And furthermore, they're staying within the footprint of what's already there. They're not affecting any neighbors, they're not obstructing any views. I think the impact on the surrounding properties and the golf course as a whole are going to be, minimal at best. So, in that light, I do believe that it, letter D is satisfied. What I would like to see, I know you do have a drawing with you.
I have a,
Is that, are we able to admit this into evidence?
If you request it and they are willing to, of course, give it, but if you want to subpoena that as far as evidence, yes, we can have that entered into the record.
Would the board members, would this drawing be helpful to see what the addition is going to look like in, I guess, considering, is that relevant, what it looks like, or is
Well,
have the descriptions and kind of the
We
purpose
require
of
a
the
full
build?
permit, and that design and type will get approved through the permit process.
Okay.
yeah, I'm with Paul on that. I believe that the permit process will iron out if there's any issues related to that. My only concern would be to ensure that the addition, in fact, is going to be contained within the current footprint of the current patio.
Yeah, so that is something I wanted to speak to from a purely administrative standpoint, that if a variance were to be granted for this, I was going to wait. I mean, it sounds like it's important enough for the board to hear now before further deliberation and while we're in the evidentiary hearing. So as I covered in my initial presentation, either the motion can be clear enough made, because that is based solely on what the application and what has been given, which is understanding it stay with that footprint. The other thing is, we do have this survey now that does clearly indicate where the existing footprint is. Another option, the board is able to impose conditions. So that could be a potential condition, that it stay with that footprint as indicated on the survey. Exhibit A-4, I believe, was the number, but we could look that up. And that would give staff, enough to be able, at time of permitting, to ensure that the application does meet the variance. One thing, I think it may be best to clear now is, based on just a quick glance of what, and hearing of sort of like the shed roof design, is that if an eave of the roof were to extend past that 17.1 or 17.2 feet, that's covered somehow, so something
well-
that minute doesn't cause an
Yeah.
issue.
That was my
I would say
question.
that exception should be normal roof overhang and/or eaves associated with the addition.
Which is 3 feet.
Is the setback,
Normal
Correct.
overhang and.
the setback is
eaves.
to the edge of the roof, it's not to the edge of the wall.
Yeah, so we would measure from basically that, whatever that protrusion would be, that would include the eave or overhang, but the current PDO does allow eaves and overhangs to encroach 3 feet. So we can just make sure that would be clarified, and that would give you a 3-foot buffer just for an eave or overhang, clear.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
to address that, the plan, that the application that was presented does show a 12-inch eave.
That would be normal, but we're not planning
Yeah,
on
and we're not gonna consider
a roof which extends 12 feet out to give you an extent.
Did I say 12 feet? 12 inches.
No.
Well, I don't have any other questions. Does anybody feel like they are prepared to make a motion regarding either approval with conditions, or denial of the variance based on any findings of fact?
If just a couple things, it would be prudent just to see if anyone else present would like to provide any testimony. And then if we feel like after concluding that, additional testimony or evidence is necessary, we could, if the board wanted to, you could either stay in the public hearing and make a motion one way or the other, or you could go ahead and close the public hearing and then open the floor up for a motion as well.
Is there anyone else present tonight that would like to make any comments or have any questions that they would like to ask? Seeing none, wonderful, thank you. Do you guys, my board members here, do you feel the need to ask any further questions, accept any further evidence at this time to make a decision?
I think everything's pretty clear.
Would anyone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I move we close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Jack Farrell to close the public hearing and return to our regular meeting, seconded by Sonia Rothstein. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing no opposition, we will close the public hearing. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate your advice, because we have to stop. I don't even like basements. Have one. But anyway, thank you very much. We really appreciate your help.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll entertain a motion if anybody's ready to make one.
I'll make one unless Paul
Well,
wants to jump.
do we want to vote, maybe craft our wording, one way or another?
So
Then we kind of know which way it's going to go, then we can craft the wording for the conditions.
The only condition I would recommend would be, and I wrote down, all construction and improvements related to this variance is limited to the area currently occupied by the existing patio footprint as shown on the Exhibit A-4, the dimensions from the outside of the brick sitting wall on the existing patio being approximately 13 by 17 feet, with the exception of normal roof overhang and/or eaves and gutter systems.
Sounds good to me.
that's perfectly acceptable. Yeah, as long as that's written down and can be,
It's more or less written down. You can scratch it. I'll scratch out what.
I think that's good. Is there any discussion as to the first finding of fact, the unnecessary hardship? Is there any need to clarify that further?
I think
Are we required to have a reason why? Or, okay, I would
The
just say
the
the
record does.
reason
need to
why is
state
to remediate stormwater issues currently destroying, existing property.
Water would
Well,
continue
yeah,
to
unnecessary hardship would result, and in that continued damage to the property may occur without addressing the water/drainage issues on the parcel.
Okay,
So what the board could do, if you want to entertain a motion, you could get a motion which would state all reasons
Right.
and findings for those four. And then after a motion, and a second, then you could,
Fine.
kind of
Tweak.
discuss it if the board feels after hearing the motion is needed.
yeah, if anybody would like to make a motion, feel free at your discretion.
Jack's got the long.
I'll give it a
condition. I'll let
shot.
you go.
Okay. I move the Board of Adjustment approve with condition the variance and adopt the following findings of fact. A necessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance in that the continued damage to the property may occur without addressing the water drainage issues on the parcel. B, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property. The topography and as-built structure is in a unique situation relative to water intrusion, not common to other parcels in the neighborhood. C, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. And D, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved, subject to the following condition: that all construction and improvements related to this variance is limited to the area currently occupied by the existing patio footprint as indicated on the Exhibit A-4, the dimensions from outside of the brick sitting wall on the existing patio being approximately 13 feet by 17 feet, with the exception of normal roof overhang and/or eaves and gutter systems.
We have a motion made by Jack Farrell. Do any of those points need any clarification, or would any member like to second the motion?
On the condition, you said 15 by 17, isn't it 13 by 17?
13 by 17, I'm sorry, did I say
Maybe
that
you might have said.
correctly? I'm sorry. No, you're right.
Okay. There's no other clarification. Do we have a second?
Second.
I would repeat the whole motion, but it was, yeah. So motion made by Jack Farrell, second by Matt Jones. I'll take a vote on the motion, and we'll go one by one here, starting with Paul.
I approve it.
Jack?
I approve.
Yes.
I also approve. This variance is approved by a vote of 5 in favor, 0 against. I guess since that takes care of that issue, the next meeting date, if there is any action before the board, would be July 7th, 2022. If there is no action before the board, no business to conduct, then we will not meet at that time. But if there are no other questions or comments, Alex, is there anything else that we need to be aware of or consider at this time?
No, if we need to, if we will meet as a group for July 7th, all we may do is just approve the minutes. That way, that accompanied with the findings that staff will put together, David, for your review and signature, most likely e-signature, just to close the book, so to speak, on the case.
Okay. Well, hearing no other comments, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Okay, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion by Sonia Rothstein. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Matt Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing no opposition, we will adjourn tonight's meeting at 5:45 PM. Thank you.